we started our financial maths journey. And when we deal with financial maths, I'm going to divide this unit up into 3 areas. The one is going to be interest, which is going to be lesson 1 and lesson 2. So today is more interest. Then lesson 3 and 4 is going to be something called depreciation, or basically it's almost like negative interest or losing value. And then the last 2 lessons in finance, we're going to do something called timelines. So that's the basic idea of where we're going. In the last lesson, we spoke about 2 different formulas, and they looked like this. The one was called the simple interest formula, or sometimes it's called SI. And then this one over here, let's use a different color, is called, not a different color, compound interest, or sometimes we call CI. Give me a thumbs up if that all looks like we're in the same part of town. Okay, fantastic. Now, for bonus points, I want to know, what does the N stand for? What does the end stand for? Who can enlighten me? It's the time period. Yes, Tender. Number of years. Pabalelo, it could be number of years, but it also could be number of months, or it could be number of weeks. So this is the time period. And today, we're going to start chopping things up into different time periods. That's going to be one of the main ideas from today. Okay, what does the p-value here stand for? What does that stand for? Pop your answers in the chat. The principal amount, or we could say it's the initial amount. It's the amount we start with. And the principal amount or the initial amount will always, and then A is the final amount. So it's almost like P goes on a journey and it ends up at A. And then the other thing we need to know is this I. And this I over here is the interest rate. But when we talk about interest rate, we need to watch out for, is it, a rate has 2 different units. And so normally with interest rate, we'll have a percentage like 6% or 5% or 1, but it's 1% per time period. And that time period could be years, but it could also be months or quarters. So like when we write it, sometimes we might see something like 3% per annum, which is an interest rate per year, but you can also have like 6% per quarter, or maybe we could have something like 2% per month. And so interest rates can go with different time periods. Give me a thumbs up if that idea makes sense a little bit. I'll even show it to you. So let's say the interest rate is 12% per annum. Can you work out for me what is going to be that interest rate converted to a per quarter interest rate? What is 12% per annum converted to a per quarter interest rate? Put your answer in the chat. Welcome to Siwa, who has joined us, and Pila. I think Pabalelo had joined us already. So what is 12% per annum converted to a per quarter? Yep, all you need to do is take 12%, or which is 0.12, and you divide it by 4, and then you would get 0.03 or 3% per quarter. Fantastic. Now, what is 12% converted to a per month interest rate? So 12% per annum, I want you to convert this to a per month interest rate. What's that going to become? So all we're going to do is, if it's a yearly interest rate of 12%, it's 0.12. To make it a monthly rate, how do you go from a yearly interest rate? Well, you take that and you divide it by 12. And if you take your yearly interest rate and you divide it by 12, you get a monthly interest rate. So what is 0.12 divided by 12 going to be? Pop your answer in the chat. I'm going to take out my calculator just in case I'm having a moment. And 0.12 divided by 12, I think it's going to come up as 1 out of 100 or 0.01, which is the same as 1% per month. So 12% per year converts to 1% interest per month. So it's important that we start to get comfortable with that. Give me a thumbs up if this little exercise I did made sense. Give me a thumbs down if I lost you there. And be honest, because remember, I can't see your faces, so your thumbs have to do the talking. You have to be emotional through your thumbs or your emoticons. Okay, let's go to this situation. So we're going to start with some multiple choice questions. So first of all, it says, what is the value of 8,800 after 3 years at 7.5% per annum compounded monthly? So in the last lesson, we spoke about the formula, and because it says compounded monthly, I'm going to have to use the compound growth formula. But I still need to identify which of these values is which of these things. So tell me from the question, what is the p-value in this situation? And what is, let's go with p. What's the p-value for this particular question? Let me know. Welcome to Esau and to Ganlin who have joined us. Tamia, welcome to you. It's great to have you with us. Okay, so you're right. It's 8,800. We don't know what A is because that's the question. Now, we need to deal with this compounded monthly thing. Now, the good news is it's not so bad. Because it's compounded monthly, if I want to get N, I don't want it to be in years. I want it to be in a different unit of time. So tell me, what do you think the N value is going to be? Given that you know this is compounded monthly, they tell you it's 3 years, but that's not the units of time that I want for this question. I want to follow the question. What do we think? So 3 is not wrong, but I need more. I need it to be in months. So I go, how many months are there in a year? And there are 36 months. So really, N is going to be 36. And the reason it's going to be 36 is the question asks about compounded monthly. And so you can only do this calculation in months because it said you have to compound monthly. And when something is compounded monthly, it means we're adding interest every month. We're not just adding interest on the original, we're adding interest on the interest we've already accumulated. So now the same problem comes here. The interest rate is per annum. Now, if I was, now you can write this as 7.5 over 100, but I tend to advise students to just get used to converting this automatically. But now this is a yearly interest rate. I need this to be a monthly interest rate. So what do I need to do to make this a monthly interest rate? Pop your answers in the chat. Share your knowledge. There could be someone out there who needs your help. So be the best you can be. What tip would you give them? Tender, what do you think? If you want to go from a yearly interest rate to a monthly interest rate, how do I do that conversion? Amokalang, you are on the money. You just do that. Okay, so now you guys and girls need to take this formula for me. This is your formula. You have found we know what P is, we know what N is, we know what I is. Tell me which of these four answers is correct by going A, B, C, or D in the chat. So take out your calculators. Don't be afraid. You've got your calculator license. You're allowed to drive. But you need to start to think about how are you going to put this information in. So I'll give you a little tip. I would start with 8,800. I would times by open brackets, and then I go 1 plus, and I hit the fraction button. And the reason I hit the fraction is that the I needs to go in as a fraction. So 0.075 over 12, close the bracket, to the power of, and the power is 36. What option are you getting that is correct here? When I do it with my calculator, I get my A value of that, which is going to be C. Give me a thumbs up if you followed that example and you're happy to move on. Thumbs down if you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, cool. Let's keep swimming then. Okay, now I'm going to let you fly solo on this one. It says, how much money should Amy invest at 11% per year if she needs 25,000 in 5 years' time? Okay, in fact, before I let you get loose on this, I want you to tell me what you think these values are for the way this question is stated. Tell me what you think A is, what P is, what I is, what N is, and then I'll let you have a go at the question. What do you think? What is A going to be? So A is what you want to end up with. So Callan, you are quite correct. It's 25,000. Now, what about P? I think that means P is what we're after. So that's unknown. What is I and N going to be? What is I and N going to be? 11%. Let's go and look. 11% per year. Now, it doesn't say anything about compounding over shorter intervals. In fact, what I'm going to say is they should have said this. They should have said compounding. Oh, sorry. Compounding yearly. Because they didn't, they should, the default is compound interest. But I'm going to say this, it's compounded yearly, which means the interest rate is just going to be 0.11. Now, and then my N, because this is going per year, the interest is being compounded yearly, I only need to know time in years, and so N is 5. Okay, I will give you the compound interest formula, but you need to do the magic and figure out for me what this p-value is, and then tell me which answer you think is correct. Over to you guys and girls. Think about where things go and take out your calculator. You can do it. So I'm going to grab some water while you're working. Lock in your answer when you have got it. How would I set it up? So I'd put a 25,000 there, a P there, 1 plus 0.11, and then that would be 5. Okay, what are we getting, everyone? So it seems like we just go fraction 25,000 over bracket 1 plus 0.11 to the power of 5, and we get 146,836.28, and so the right answer is B. And I can see in the chat we were all over that, so that is fantastic. Okay, well, let's keep going. Okay, let us do this like, okay, I'm not going to do, it says Sabrina invests 10,000 Rand in an account for 2 years. Determine the final amount. We are just going to do B. We are not going to do A. So can you please, and I'm going to tell you, assume compound interest. Because in the real world, compound interest is the most natural way to describe what's going on. Oh, it says here compounded quarterly. So it's in the question. Sorry. Old person moment. There we go. So I want you to work out what B's answer would be for you. And I want you to do it by yourself and then say done in the chat when you're done. And we will see what the answer is. And welcome to Amokelang. I see you've joined us. Sisipo. And who else? And Jabulo, I think I've welcomed you already. And Machiliso as well. Welcome. Let's start with the stuff that's, what is A equal? We don't know. What is I equal? Now to change this to a quarterly interest rate, I divide by 4. And for N, I've got 2 years, but I don't want time in years. I want it in quarters. And so I times it by 4, and there are 8 quarters in 2 years. So what is my final A value going to be? How much money am I going to end up with? Who feels like they can share some wisdom here with us? I know somebody in this class has already got the answer. You know what they say? Sharing is caring. So, as far as I can tell, that's the way I would do it. What are we in? Amokelang, thank you very much. Can anybody confirm? Ooh, we've got some differences. Let's have a look. I think we need lots of class members to get involved here so we can figure out who's who in the zoo here. What are we getting for our answers here? Okay, well, let me pull up the answer. Let me pull up my little memo. I don't always pull it up, but I think this might be nice. So we are getting, as the correct answer for this question, 13,424.71. So I don't know if you can see that. Let me bring it up. It's B over here. So we should have ended up with that. Thumbs up if you could, even if you got it wrong, if you understand where you went wrong. Thumbs down if you feel a bit lost. And again, there's a lot of you in the room, so I need some indication of how my students are feeling. I'm getting mostly hands up, so I think you're with me. So that's part of the learning process. So I'm going to keep going. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, actually, you know what? Before I move on to that, I want to ask you, if you ended up, so A value, in the end, you ended up with 13,424.71. I want to know how much interest did you get on your money? So there was a situation going on. You started with a certain amount, you ended with a certain amount. How much interest did you make based on the situation you had going on with the bank here? See if you can work it out just by looking at the question. So the interest that you've earned is just the difference between A and P, right? So you ended up with this, and you started with 10,000, I think. So that, sorry, was it 10,000 or was it, no, it was 10,000, yeah. So the interest, the amount of interest, not the interest rate, hey? So the amount of interest is just going to be 3424.71. So you made 3,424 Rand and 71 cents interest in just 2 years. So you got a nice interest rate. Give me a thumbs up for that, if that makes sense. There's a difference between the interest rate. The interest rate has two parts. It has like a time period and a percentage, whereas the interest is just an amount of money. Okay, fantastic. Then, in financial maths, we often have to deal with the idea of discount. So here is a discount or selling price question type of thing. Calculate how much you would pay for a pair of jeans with a selling price of 260 if that is marked with a 15% discount. So I want to know, if its normal price is 260 and there's a 15% discount, how much do these jeans now cost? Choose an option here. Remember that 15% can be written as 0.15. So there's a couple of ways you can do this, but if you want to know how much the discount is, you would say 260 times 0.15, but you don't have to, there's a quicker way than this, but I'm just doing it. So you get a 39 Rand discount, but then if you want to know the final price, you're going to have to say 260 minus 39, which is 221. The other way of doing this is to say, look, if I lose 15% and the original was 100%, well, that's just going to be 85%. So I could just start with the original 260, times it by 0.85, and I will get the same answer, 221. And so the correct answer is C. Okay, so always good to have a feel for discounts and increase in prices and stuff like that. Let's have a look. Do you know what? Let's take a break. That's a great time. Or let's do let's take a break. So away from the tables, I want you to join me in giving yourself a break. If you've got a glass of water, you can raise it and cheers. And what we are going to do is we're just going to take 3 deep breaths. Breathe in. Breathe in. Okay. And we're going to get nice and loose, because when we're relaxed, we do maths better. So we're going to get nice and relaxed. Just roll our shoulders quickly. Shake out our arms. Shake out this arm. Oh, it feels so good. You're You're missing out if you're not shaking your arms. Shake those legs. And then you know what's coming next. We just got to get the heart pumping. The best way that I know of doing this is jumping jacks. And we start in 3, 2, 1. Let's do 15. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Take a nice deep breath there. And then hit the emoticon that brings you the most joy, or the emoticon that describes how you're feeling. I want a sense of where you are at. I can feel my heart beating, but that's, I guess, kind of the point, isn't it? So I shouldn't be surprised, but I can feel the blood flowing around my body, and that's good. That is part of why we do it. Okay, so we are back for part 2 of today's lesson. Now, I want you to look at this question, and I want you, before we start, to tell me what is different about this question. So read through it and tell me what you notice is different. Like, how have I turned up the heat here? How would you describe that? So Max invests this much for 10 years. Interest is calculated at 7.5% per annum compounded annually. But after 2 years, the interest rate changes to 8.5%. How much will Max have after 10 years? What is different about this question? Who can spot it? So the interest rate is given twice. Yeah. So Callan, you're quite right. The interest rate is given twice. And in fact, another way of saying that is the interest rate changes. So a useful thing to think about in financial maths is something called a timeline. And so if I think about this being T0 and this being T10, what happens is at T2, the interest rate changes. So like the interest rate was here, it was one thing. And then for the rest of the time, the interest rate was that. So the interest rate is calculated at 7.5% per annum compounded annually. Okay, so for this one, the interest rate is just 0.075. And then over here, it changes to 8.5%. It should say per annum. So I equals 0.085. Do you want to try and work this out by yourself and give me an answer, or would you like another tip? Let me know in the chat if you're ready to take this on, or do you need another tip? So my timeline is trying to show you the first 2 years is that interest rate. The next 8 years is that. How much money will I have after 10 years? And there's 4 choices. I'll give you some time. If you get stuck, raise your hand, ask me a question, or put it in the chat. But I think you can figure this out. Now, it definitely is the compound interest formula. So I'll give you that. That's going to be the first part, but I haven't covered enough time. So the problem is I'm kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere after 2 years. So you're going to have to do some more work to help me figure out the answer. Like at this point, I'm stuck on 13,751.9375, but that's not the final answer. What do I still need to do? I think we need to figure out a way to grow the rest of the way. So once you've got a decision about which one you think is correct, put your answer in the chat. And then if you're feeling a bit lost, just give me a thumbs down or unhappy face, just so I can see if I'm losing some of you. This is a bit harder. And so I want to see if I'm losing any of you. Okay. So if you're feeling a bit lost, the real thing here is for the first 2 years, this gets me to that amount, but I still need to grow for 8 more years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this value, okay? And the way to do it is I need to take this amount and it needs to grow. So, okay, I tell you what, let me do it like this. I'm going to take 13,751.9375 and I'm going to grow this for 8 more years. What do you think is going to go inside this bracket here? I think it has to be 1 plus, but then what is going to go in here? Is it going to be 7.5%? No. It's going to be 8.5%, which is 0.085. Or if you're confused about that, it's just 8.5 over 100 is 0.085. Now, if you do that, you grow that amount that was sitting in the bank after 2 years for 8 more years, and you should get your final answer. And then see if you can find one of the options that match. Is that helpful? Let me know with some happy faces if that was helpful, that idea that I explained now. Okay. So which option do we think is correct? A, B, C, or D? I'll have to do some calculator work myself here. Times 1 plus 0.085 to the power of 8. What are you guys and girls getting? I'm getting 26412.03, which is answer number C. Now, and I see Gandon and Callan agree with me. Now, when we deal with financial maths questions where the interest rate changes, you can do it separately. There's nothing wrong, but you will see a lot of teachers, what they do is they say, look, let me do the first bit. Okay, there's my first bit. Now, this is basically acting like one thing, and that one thing needs to grow. And so all I'm going to do is say, look, this is my new p-value, and then I'm just going to stick this on the end over here. And so in class, some teachers will present it like this. You will still get the same final answer. All that they are doing is that they are basically putting the 2 steps together in one line. So you can either go first, get that, then use that again, or you just do this bit and you use it as the input, and it'll both give you the same answer. Now, I think that might frighten a few of us, but just give me a thumbs up if you kind of understand how these are connected. Like this thing over here is the same as that. It's just a different way of doing the same thing. Okay. And if you are confused, you can re-watch this part on the recording, remember? All right, now let's us go to, let's not do that question. Let's do inflation. Okay, so let's have a look at this idea of inflation. Often this is dealt with in financial maths. So determine the average rate of inflation if extra maths lessons used to cost 100 Rand per hour in 2016, but now cost 150 Rand an hour in 2020. Now, whenever you hear the word inflation in the real world, what that really is the average compound increase in prices over time. So I'll say it again. Inflation is just the average increase of price, average compound increase of price over time. So the formula that we're going to use to help us here is going to be this. But in this formula, the I is the inflation rate. So instead of thinking of it as the interest rate, we think of it as the inflation rate. Now, given question 1, what do you think is the P value and what do you think is the A value for this question? So I'm doing question 1. The I is going to stand for the inflation rate. What do you think is P in this question? What do you think is A? Amukhalang, with the previous question, you're completely fine for doing the bottom method. So you start with 100 Rand per hour, and it's going to end up at 150. Perfect. Now, what do you think N is going to be for this question? What do you think N is going to be for this question if we're working out the average rate of inflation for extra maths lessons between these things? It's 4 because from 2016 to 2020 is 4. Okay, so we are going to take our formula. We are going to say that 150 is equal to 100, 1 plus I, where I is the inflation rate, and this is going to be 4. We did a bit of this in the last lesson. Can you find me that I? You need to do some algebra and unlock this I, and then tell me what you get for I, and that will be the inflation rate over those 4 years. So go for it, and then if you get stuck, let me know where I can help you. How am I going to unlock that I? I feel like the 100 is the first problem. So if I could deal with the 100, maybe that would help me. Oh, I can divide both sides. So I can just go. But then I need to know what undoes to the power of 4. Well, it's either the 4th root or to the power of a quarter. Don't know which ones you guys prefer. If you raise this to the power of a quarter and this to the power of a quarter, you are going to get 1 plus I on this side, and you are going to get something on this side, whatever it may be. I'm not sure yet. What are you getting for your I value? I feel like whatever I is, it must just be that. And it's going to be in decimal. So what are you guys and girls getting as your decimal? I'm going to do it now myself. So I'm going to say bracket fraction 150 over 100 close brackets, to the power of a quarter. And then I'm going to take away 1, which gives me, I'm getting 0.106681. Okay, so there it is. If I times this by 100 on both sides, basically I can get the percentage. And so the percentage is going to be 10. Oh, there is a 10.69% per annum increase in those 4 years. So what we've worked out is that between 2016 and 2020, each year, the cost of a maths lesson per hour went up by 10.69% per year. Oh, did I go, wait, 10.6668, 10.6. Oh, I made a mistake, everyone. Can you see my mistake? It's 10.67. Apologies. Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. Give me a thumbs down if I've lost you. Okay, so this is sort of an inflation question. So let's do the one that I'm going to highlight in yellow. So it says, determine what a car would have cost 4 years ago if it now costs 200,000 and the average rate of inflation was 8.6%. If they don't give you a year, it's automatically going to be per annum. So see if you can work that out for me. So if it costs 200,000 Rand now, and that you know the rate of inflation, how much would that same car cost 4 years ago? You'll always hear teachers going on about how once upon a time a Coke only used to cost 1 Rand 15 cents. And ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you, I've been around long enough to have seen that day. It really is true that when I was in primary school and I went to the shop, I could buy a Coke for like 1 Rand and 5 cents, I remember. So this does really happen. And so the question then is, okay, can we work backwards? If I know how much something costs now and I know the inflation, what can I do the maths that goes backwards? Now, some people may say, why do I have to wait until the end to get to the P by itself? Can't I just move everything around at the beginning? And some of your teachers will do this. They'll say, if you know you want P, just move this at the very beginning and then just put the values in here. And to be honest, I agree with them once you understand what's going on. So you could actually rearrange the formula at the beginning and now just put in the correct values. What are you getting for your so you're going to put 200,000 here. We're going to go 1 plus 0.086. It's per year, so you can say it's like over 1, or you can just leave it as it is. But we're not done because we need an n. What is the n going to be? Well, it was 4 years, and so that's 4. So fraction 200,000 divided by bracket 1 plus 0.086 to the power of 4. What are you getting, everyone? How much did this car cost only 4 years ago? It feels a bit nuts based on what the math says, but the math's not lying. It's 143,784.04. So it's essentially that, yeah. So just 4 years ago, a car that today costs 200,000 only cost 143,784. And that was with an inflation rate of 8.6%. That seems like, whoa, those prices grew quickly. Give me a thumbs up if you are okay with that one. Okay. Last little bit for the day is today's lesson was all about interest. Okay. And there is, in the world of interest, sometimes teachers will ask you about the nominal interest rate. And sometimes they will talk about the effective interest rate. And I want to just kind of make the connection for you. So if I say to you, look, the quoted interest rate is 12% nominal per annum. The interest rate is 12% per annum. Okay. But that's the quoted interest rate. But you are going to compound it monthly. Compound it monthly. That has an effect because if you go from 12% per annum, and that's the rate, but now you can compound it monthly, what you actually are doing is you're not adding 12% once a year. What you're doing is you're taking that 12%, you're chopping it up into months, and then you're doing that 12 times. So basically what you're doing there is you're saying you're getting a 1% interest rate per month, and you're doing that, you're compounding it every month. And so that's how the nominal interest rate of this actually has a different effective interest rate, because if you chop your rate into smaller pieces, you get interest on interest. Now that sounds like a mouthful, so I don't want you to worry about that too much in terms of words, but I want you to understand the formula that I'm going to give you to help you with understanding what the effective interest rate is. So the effective interest rate is often written I with an EFF as a sort of lowercase, and then it will be 1 plus I nom, which is the nominal rate, divided by the number of basically what you're splitting something up into. So if you're compounding monthly, then you would divide by 12. And then what you are then going to do is you are going to take this thing over here, and whatever n was, you're going to times it by m there. And then you are going to take away 1. Now, I will carry on in the next lesson with this, but I just want to show you how you can go from a 12% per annum nominal interest rate and calculate the effective interest rate. I just want to finish with this example today. So how would this look? I'm going to take this formula and I'm going to say, what is my nominal interest rate? It's 0.12. Give me a thumbs up if you're with me so far. Okay, so we're just introducing another formula and learning how to use it. Now, if we are compounding it monthly, the value at the bottom here needs to be 12. Okay, and actually this formula here, because it actually doesn't even need to have an n, sorry, this should just have an m here, because it's assumed to be 1 year. So you don't even need to multiply this by n times m. It's just going to be the m value that you had here. So basically, the time period is going to be, the number of time periods is going to be 12 over here. Then I'm going to go minus 1. So I'll talk more. I'm just check that I wrote this formula down correctly, but I know that it will work out. What are you getting as the decimal over here if you put that into your calculator? So 1 plus 0.1 divided by 12 to the power of 12 minus 1. What are you getting as your decimal? 1 plus fraction button 0.12 over 12 to the power of 12 minus 1. Are you getting 0.1268250301. Give me a thumbs up if you get the same as me here. And what this is telling us is, I'm going to write this as a percentage. So as a percentage, it's going to be 12.68%. And what this is telling us is that even though the nominal interest rate is 12% per annum, if I compound it monthly, if I chop it up into monthly interest rates and I add it 12 times, the effective interest rate is higher than 12%. It's 12.68%. And that's because of the effect of interest on interest. Now, if you're having a little bit of stress about this, don't worry. I will talk more about it next week. All you need to write down is this formula here. And it's just a way of converting between the nominal rate and the effective. And the effective will be higher when you compound because of interest on interest. So give me a smiley face